Hello everybody, welcome to Us Rusty Buckets. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference in how this video performs in the YouTube algorithm. So we're doing hot takes for the first time in quite a while, and that means that we've actually stacked up a ton of hot takes. It's been almost a month since I asked for them, so the first batch of these are from around Christmas, and then there's some from early January. So with that said, we got rid of the takes that didn't age well. Otherwise, these were fairly evergreen, so I'm gonna react to them either way. With that said, it's hot takes. Let's get into it. You cannot name 5 big men playing right now better than Karl Anthony Towns. Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, Giannis, Bam Adebayo. Yes, I can. Aaron Nesmith is the second best player on the Pacers and should undoubtedly start. That's a wild take. I also want to point out, given the timing of this, that Pascal Siakam was traded to the Pacers after this take, so that is a factor here. However, even with that being conceded, we're still talking about something that I definitely strongly disagree with. I do want to point out Aaron Nesmith has been awesome this year, and I was nice to see because I always believed in him. But if you want to make the claim that he is now their 4th best player after Miles Turner, Tyrese, and Pascal, that's fine, but Miles Turner is definitely better than Aaron Nesmith. Even if Miles' defense doesn't really show the way that it used to, he's such a good offensive player for this team. The ability to stretch the floor, he is a great pick and roll duo member with Tyrese, and in the 4 games that they've had with Pascal, he's seemed to have very good chemistry with Pascal. So yeah, it's no doubt to me who the second best player on the Pacers was, and now who the 3rd best player on the Pacers is, and that is Miles Turner. Aaron Nesmith is good though. If the Hawks had a better record, Trae Young would be in MVP conversations. I mean, you can say that about so many players ever. That's really not all that compelling of a take. Sure, you're arguing he has MVP level box score, sure, but he doesn't have the wins even close to it all. So you're right. No, he's not going to be in MVP conversations unless he has a better record, but that's just the game. That's how MVP works. It's more of an observation than anything else. If the Warriors drafted LaMelo instead of Wiseman, they'd be the best team in the NBA. That feels like a bit of a stretch to me, just simply by virtue of the fact that LaMelo has had so many injury issues. Really, I think what would have happened had the Warriors drafted LaMelo is they probably would have played him for a little bit, and then some sort of star player would have become available. I don't know the exact timeline of who that would be, but they'd probably trade that guy to get whoever it may be. Maybe it's Kevin Durant. Wouldn't that be funny? But I don't think LaMelo was necessarily going to be a long-term part of their future. If he did end up there, I don't know if his playstyle would have really translated super well with the Warriors playstyle, at least at first. Not that it wouldn't have been made to work, because LaMelo is a good player and the Warriors have a good system, so that talent figures it out. But also, I feel like the Warriors would have probably wanted a different type of player ultimately, and a more established type of player, especially when you see how fucking Steve Kerr treats his young players in the rotation. But you know, if they had him or if they traded him, either outcome would have been significantly better than what they're currently doing. So one way or the other, it's a huge mistake. Ant is top 10. I don't think I can quite get there. There's too many players that are better than Anthony Edwards, and I don't think it's really a knock on Anthony Edwards. Probably like 6-7 years ago, he would have been top 10, being as good as he is. In this NBA, 26 points per game isn't even a crazy amount. His defense is really good, but otherwise his contributions are pretty much scoring and defense. Obviously, those are like the 2 most important things, but his playmaking needs work. His scoring can be inconsistent. His efficiency is not better than league average at any point. So there's just some room for him to get better, to get into that top 10 conversation. I was hoping that would happen this year. Hasn't quite happened. I think that probably comes this following season, where he truly breaks out to like be in the superstar tier, but he's not quite on that level. And as of the current state of the NBA right now, I feel like there are 10 players you can define as superstars. Everyone in the top 10 is probably a superstar. Anthony Edwards, not one of them yet, but soon. Derrick White is unquestionably deserving of being an all-star this season. Unquestionably is crazy. There's plenty of questions. There's also the factor of how many Celtics are going to be in the All-Star game. because, I mean, if maybe you want to argue Derrick White's the third best player in the Celtics, I definitely wouldn't argue he's their second best player. If you want 4 Celtics in there, I mean, it's not something that's never happened before, but that's pretty bold to suggest, especially given the competition at the guard position in the East being pretty solid. You know, is he getting in there over Maxey, Trae, Dame? Who else am I forgetting in the starting lineup right now? For fuck's sake, whatever. My point being, there's a lot of players that are arguably at least better than Derrick White, and yeah, he personally did not make my ballot. I don't think I said Tyrese. I said Tyrese Maxey, not Tyrese Haliburton. Tyrese Haliburton's also on the list. This has all been a mess. No, Derrick White's not an all-star, and it's especially not unquestionable. Derrick White's really fucking good though, so respect. A team scoring more than 200 points in a game is more likely to happen than a player dropping 100 this century. I don't know that I feel strongly one way or the other in terms of which one of these is more likely, because I feel like both have arguably gotten close enough at times that it seems doable. I mean, Joel Embiid got that 70 piece in 36 fucking minutes. You know, you get a game like that that also manages to be really close the whole way through, perhaps goes to overtime, someone who just plays more minutes than Joel Embiid does, especially if it's a type of coach who's like, if you're hot, I'm just not going to take you out of the game. There's definitely a right set of circumstances for a player to score 100, and there's obviously also a right set of circumstances for a team to score 200, especially with the depth of scoring that teams have these days. Like someone like Norman Powell on the Clippers, for example, being like the 4th best scorer that team has. Go back to the 90s and Norman Powell's like the 2nd best scorer on most teams, if not the best on a couple of them. And that's just the state of the game right now and the depth of offensive talent that exists. So maybe for that reason 200 is a little bit more achievable, but also the pace and space of this era, I don't know. I think both are fairly more achievable than the fact that they haven't ever happened would suggest. And I think with the way that offense is going in the modern NBA, if anything, it's inevitable that this is going to happen again, in the case of the 200-point game for the first time. Draymond Green's influence on the Warriors dynasty has always been overstated. I already know I'm going to hate this take. He has never been even a number 3. His defense and floor captain skills have always been replaceable. Scoring numbers non-existent. Liability with text ejections. I'm sorry to say this, Johnny, but that's a fucking horrible take. His defense is replaceable. You don't say that about generational defensive players, man. You just don't. And Draymond absolutely is one of those. That is a joke. He's never been a number 3. I mean, I think technically he literally was in like 2016, was 3rd in scoring on the team. But even that aside, there are so many more aspects of the game than scoring. Like scoring numbers non-existent. Yeah. It's because he did all the other things super fucking well. Does Dennis Rodman have minimal to no impact on the 90s Bulls or the 80s Pistons just because he wasn't putting up points? No, that's a ludicrous, dumb argument, and we should at least all know to some degree that there's more to the game than scoring. Clearly, you value it more than anything else. Being able to bring the level of defense that Draymond was the anchor of without a doubt, year after year after year. I mean, the Warriors are always a top offense. Well, were always a top offense because of the presence of Steph, and that same thing can be applied to the opposite end of the floor where they were always a great defense because of the presence of Draymond Green. I'm not taking away the fact that there were other good defenders on the Warriors or that Steve Kerr can have good defensive schemes, but there's no doubt where the Warriors defense starts, and it's with Draymond fucking Green. So no, his value has not been overstated. His influence has not been overstated. In fact, it has been understated. Draymond Green was a more important player to the Warriors than Klay Thompson for more of his tenure than not. That's just wrong, and it's overvaluing scoring. Khris Middleton is at Payton Pritchard's level on both ends. The only thing is he gets more shots and chances because he makes $40 million a year. He is washed. What a fucking weird example that is. Payton Pritchard level on both ends. I mean, I haven't paid much attention to Middleton this year, and obviously he's a step slow from what he was. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Probably better than than Payton Pritchard, I would say. Value to contract wise, given the fact that, as you point out, he does make $40 million, probably a different conversation, but I still think Khris Middleton's better than Payton Pritchard, but that's a take for sure. Trey Murphy III will be a top 30 player in the league next year and get a max extension, a 3-level scorer with insane deep 3-point range. Top 30 next year is probably being a little ambitious. Not going to lie. I do think that Trey Murphy is going to be really, really good. I do think he has all-star level potential. If anything, I think he can be a taller, longer, more athletic and versatile offensively version of Klay Thompson, which I realize is a very high praise, but I truly believe that Trey Murphy can be that good. I'm obviously talking about a peak Klay Thompson here. I don't know if he's going to be like a lead option, also 3-level scorer. I feel like his in-between game, I don't know what his percentages on them are. I just know that I don't feel like he's a super strong creator. Maybe he shoots well at all 3 levels, but that doesn't necessarily mean great 3-level scorer if you think about it from like a creation of the offense standpoint. One of the best shooters in the NBA already, going to be an all-time great 3-point shooter, which is really huge given his size, because shooters at his size are rarely as truly excellent at shooting as he is. He's a really good athlete. He's a positive defender. I would not be surprised if his mid-range percentages were good. Okay, according to Rudy, he's taken exactly 12 mid-range shots this season. That's not a good look for the 3-level scorer thing. I'm guessing most of his points are 3-point attempts, usually catch and shoots, or fast break stuff, or attacking off of the catch. 140 3-point attempts to 50 field goal attempts. Yeah, we're talking about a guy who's playing like a specialist. I do think he has more to his game than 3-point shooting, but I think he'll be, essentially a taller Klay Thompson. The NBA should split Defensive Player of the Year into 3 separate awards: Best Perimeter Defender, Best Interior Defender, and then Best Overall Defender. Every year, great perimeter defenders like Bridges or Holiday get snubbed by bigs because defensive impact is biased towards rim protection and rebounding. I agree in principle with what you're saying. If anything, I would just break it down into 2 awards and say Best Perimeter Defender or Best Wing Defender and Best Center Defender. You could just do that, because I have always argued Defensive Player of the Year, if it's going to be one award, should pretty much never go to a guard, because DPOY should go to the best defender in the NBA, and the best defender in the NBA every single year, without question, is a power forward or a center. It just always is, so it should always go to a big. But this would allow perimeter defenders, as you mentioned, like Jrue Holiday or Mikal Bridges, who deserve to be in have some sort of defensive accolade beyond just their all defensive teams, but aren't really getting it because there's just no way you compete with being a center. So yeah, I mean, Mikal Bridges did lose to Marcus Smart, so that wasn't really an excuse for him individually. But I get your point. I agree. I don't think overall defender is a really helpful idea. I think at that point you just give that to the center, so you just the same player wins best interior defender and best overall defender. That's not a bad idea. The Bulls should trade LaVine for a 25 to 26-year-old win now player, not young but not old, a long-term player to help push for a playoff spot to give Pat Will and Kobe White playoff experience. At this point, I don't know if we're going to be able to trade Zach LaVine for literally anything of quality, so sure. There aren't 5 players in the world I'd take over Tyrese going forward. I would say Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Giannis, those are all guys. Probably Wemby. After that, I guess you might be right. Not necessarily that he'd be my first pick after those names, but like everybody else is either old enough that they're older than Tyrese by a considerable margin, or they just have injury history. Like Joel Embiid's obviously a much better player than Tyrese Maxey, but like 5 years from now, will he be? Who knows? That type of thing. But Jokic and Giannis are young enough while being as good as they are that I think you let that slide, that they're like 28, 29. I don't know. That's not that crazy of a take. Being able to be the offensive generator that Tyrese is, I think Luka is really the only other guy who truly eclipses him in that category in the NBA right now, who's also a fairly young player. Maybe that's not all that crazy of a take. DeAaron Fox is a top 3 point guard this season. I mean, it depends on who you're defining as point guard, but I feel like that should be fairly obvious. I mean, if SGA, Luka, and Steph are all point guards, then I guess no. Yeah, I think think he's probably fourth, because I think they're both. I think all of those guys are listed at point, and I probably view them as points. And I think all of those guys are better than DeAaron, unfortunately. But number 4 is a pretty good spot because that's a crazy top 3. Just to be clear, it's a very solid top 3 players to be better than you. You got no shame in that. LeBron's worst decision in his entire career was that 2-year extension with the Lakers. Worse than the decision by far. I mean, that implies that the decision was a mistake. I mean, obviously it changed the trajectory of his career, and a lot of people still have a, piss a fit about it. I don't think the decision was a bad decision by any means. He won championships in Miami, gave Cleveland the proper tools to rebuild instead of perpetually keeping them too good to draft high, but not good enough to win. So the decision was a good decision and not a negative thing for him. However, the extension with the Lakers, I mean, it's more dependent on his motivations than what you think his motivation should be. And I think LeBron is more capable than not of understanding what's best for him in his career. He probably just wants to stay in LA until he's figuring out where he's going with his son. And I don't know if you guys know this, but LeBron likes money. He really, really likes money a lot. And this was the best money-making opportunity for him by far, the best guaranteed money, the most money any team could offer him. I can't say that it's the worst decision of his entire career. I think the worst decision of his entire career was probably approving the Russell Westbrook trade, to be honest. Erik Spoelstra is the runaway coach of the year. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go with that route. I think because of the time this was posted, the Heat were like the 3 seed or something like that, but they've been slipping a little bit lately, and I think they're just 2 games over 500 now. No, Erik Spoelstra is the best coach in the league, no doubt about that, but probably not my top pick for coach of the year. It's time for the Spurs to move on from Greg Popovich. I mean, I just don't think that's something that's realistic. I don't think with the franchise's history with Popovich that's going to happen unless he just gets truly unhinged, and I don't think he has reached the threshold of truly unhinged yet. I don't think a lot of people realize just how much influence and power Popovich has on the Spurs as an organization. Don't get me wrong, their owner technically has any right to fire him at any point if he wants to, but also there's a good chance that would lead to a riot in San Antonio. I wouldn't expect that anytime soon. I think Pop is going to decide when Pop hangs it up. Right now, Duncan Robinson is better than Klay Thompson. Frankly, I probably agree with that take from a couple of different perspectives. From a value of contract perspective, there's no doubt about that. Duncan Robinson, also, I saw some chart the other day, is like 3rd in shots created for the Miami Heat. So, we're not just talking about Duncan Robinson of 2020. The guy has a lot more ability offensively. He has more counters to you if you defend him well on the 3-point line. He knows how to attack, knows how to cut, knows how to make the right pass, has very good chemistry. 2-man game specifically with Bam Adebayo, and it's a pretty big staple of Miami's offense, especially when they go to their bench unit. As for Klay Thompson, he has been shot chucking this year. His defense is terrible. Not that Duncan's is good, but defense was previously a thing that gave Klay favor that he no longer has working for him. He also has a piss poor attitude. Like, every comment from Klay Thompson to the media all the time is just like regularly, he seems like he's so pissed off. And I'm pissed off at how pissed off he is. And again, like, Klay Thompson's making how much versus Duncan making $18 million a year? I don't know. It's probably somewhat close, but if you ask me just which player I'd rather have on my roster, especially with the context of the contract, it's easily Duncan Robinson. The Wemby's teammates hate him conversation is tiring and reductive and ignores the primary issue is that the Spurs are a bad team with 4 good young players learning how to play the league and work out bad habits, with the rest of the quality being Cedi Osman and Keldon Johnson. Is Keldon officially too old to be considered a young player? And also, who are the 4 good young players? I guess Vassell, Wemby, Tre Jones. Are we counting Sohan in that category? It was probably a little overblown. There were definitely some plays though where it was like, it seems like the only way that this play could happen is if you specifically hate this guy. Enough clips of those in a row where that seemed to be the case. You don't want to fall into the danger of like reading body language and shit like that, or like putting emotions into these things that truly could not be there and you just don't know any better. But at the end of the day, there was enough reason to look at it poorly. Also, it was just Wemby was not getting enough attention from his teammates. They were not looking for him enough. Whether that was just pure ignorance or malice or not, it is a problem, and I think it was enough of a problem that I'm okay over exaggerating about elements of it, just to the point that the problem gets fucking fixed, which since this tweet has gone up, it seems like it has been fixed. So the game is becoming less watchable for non-casual fans due to the officiating that favors offense and high-scoring game. Wow, someone should make a video about that and put it as the top link in the description. Being an offensive engine as a superstar is much more important than being a good defender, especially in the modern era. Thus, Jokic, Luka, and any other future offensive gods does have a chance to become the GOAT. Two-way impact isn't required. That's going to be a hard point to argue because there still are players who are two-way players and superstars in the NBA. Giannis and Joel Embiid are the top among them right now. I do think there's definitely an argument to be made that the two-sided nature of the game is not as valued as it used to be, and that being, we definitely value offense more in a more obvious way than we did in the past. There's definitely always going to be arguments about a player's defense. If it's something that can be critiqued, it will be. That's the nature of this thing. Steve Kerr is getting a pass for poor coaching for Golden State because he has 4 championship rings. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. To a degree, I think that's perfectly acceptable. You earn a little bit of seniority and get to swing your dick around a bit when you have 4 rings on it. Did I really just say that? Whatever, it's the end of the video. No one's watching at this point. Julius Randle and Pascal Siakam are stamped in a bad way. No matter what they do, no one will take them seriously. I'm okay with Julius Randle in that conversation. I'm not okay with Pascal Siakam there. Pascal's been good. Toronto's just been not. And Pascal in a backup role rather than as a primary option. Not backup as in bench, but like secondary, third option on offense. That version of Pascal Siakam literally already has been a serious and very impactful player on a championship team. Something that's already happened. So I just don't know if you can stamp him in that way. Julius is also so much more inconsistent than Pascal. Like, I don't know why you're clumping these players together. The best trade destination for LaVine is the Orlando Magic. They have the defense and playmakers to cover his flaws and need a shooter and 3-level scorer of his caliber. They also have 3 non-shooting guards who don't fit well: Fultz, Anthony Black, and Suggs. So trading one would be okay. As far as I remember, Suggs has shot the 3-ball well this year, although I haven't looked in quite a while. Also, be careful with 3-level scorer with Zach LaVine, at least in terms of his efficiency. Zach has never been a particularly efficient mid-range shooter, and his slashing has progressively gotten worse and worse and worse. His 3-point shooting is really the only thing that I think he does super, super well in the NBA, other than just like fast break stuff. But sure, I do agree there's a fit there. Is it a fit the Orlando Magic want to pursue while also giving up so much of their salary cap room to Zach LaVine? Yeah, I don't know about that. I think they'd be better off sticking with what they have and letting it grow organically, which has been the approach that they have made to this point. And I feel like Zach LaVine is not the quality of player that you break that streak for. That is it. That was Hot Takes. If you haven't already, I would appreciate it if you go check out my main channel video that I sarcastically promoted earlier. We discussed the state of offense in the NBA today, the history of the game and how it got there, as well as what we can do to change it if and indeed that is what we want to do. So link in the description should be the top one. The second link will be to Nick, the editor of this channel. His podcast, The Coping Hour, is the best basketball podcast out there. But yeah, shout out to Nick for editing, and that is it. Goodbye.